Hello YouTube, back with the next BattleBots review, and today I'm reviewing episode 1 of season 1.0, the first episode of, the first episode on Comedy Central's, show. I mean, as in regards to the actual season. I mean, we had the Prelude to Battle the week before, and 2 weeks ago for me, I think. Yeah, about 2 weeks ago we had that. And it was an interesting start. I mean, it was probably, and it didn't have the greatest third battle with Overkill versus Frenzy, but Ziggo versus Missing Link was pretty decent. A lot of destruction all around. It was a rather quick fight, as was Mauler versus Nightmare, but that was a driving error. Missing Link really never stood a chance against Ziggo, because, I mean, it was completely trashed. And that was the fight where instead of the chainsaw, I think it was using later bouts, I think, had interchangeable weaponry. It had a carbon fiber composite sort of block on the end of a long rod, which I think may have housed another weapon, but it didn't do a thing. Ziggo shredded that, ripped it off, and then took off eventually both wheels by the end of the fight. So this Link was completely disabled by the time that was over. But it was relatively decent. I mean, the shot of the kill saws right after that. I mean, Missing Link was hit just right that it landed on the kill saws after the final wheel was taken off, and then the kill saws got it for kind of one final shot. So it ended up being relatively decent in terms of a good way to start the show, really. And then we had Mauler versus Nightmare, which was even shorter, I think, than that. Given that we saw, Jim Spentowski, I think he meant to hit the weapon, but obviously Mauler got the wheel instead, just ripped that off. That was kind of the end of Nightmare. Nightmare really couldn't do anything after that. His Nightmare was pretty much had two wheels, and then with one wheel gone, he was not properly balanced in terms of having his both drive wheels on the ground. So the last one really couldn't do anything. I guess the only interesting thing about that, other than the very little impact in the fight, was the fact that Mauler was spinning so quickly it had to use the arena to slow down. But he did. Even the fact that Jim was basically getting attacked even after Bot was pretty well disabled, he was still smiling about it. He was trying to be nice over the ordeal. I mean, he likes destruction as much as the next guy, but he didn't get necessarily upset over being attacked after Bot couldn't do anything. It was a relatively okay fight. I mean, maybe not quite as good as Missing Link versus Ziggo, but definitely a fight to probably rewatch, although kind of sort of underwhelming when you think about it. You got two destructive robots, and the best they can do is kind of one hit, and it's over. And then you got Overkill versus Frenzy, which, yes, I guess arguably did have a lot of action, but they were all mostly swings and misses. In fact, even the so-called battle stats, which kind of sort of registered all of those, but again, they're made up directly for the show. And it made for a pretty lackluster fight, especially since it went the full 3 minutes. So 3 minutes of basically not hitting each other, in some cases, especially for Overkill, getting sucked into the spike strip and hitting the wall instead. So you got very, very few hits were involved in that. This is the same frenzy that would end up being used in Robot Wars, or in the Series 4 War of Independence. The exact same frenzy. You can tell, a lot of ways you compare the two, it's exactly the same. So it pretty well just run it over. Boy. You almost wonder, you watch some of the other fights that did not make it on TV, and you wonder why couldn't they have used some of those. It's kind of a toss-up, considering the fact that you look at the Dr. Inferno Jr. versus Alpha Raptor fight, not a lot goes on. I mean, the kill saws don't play a role until, almost halfway through the bout. So they showed probably the best highlight of that fight, and that it's kind of unfortunate. They probably didn't have a whole lot of other choices in terms of fights. I mean, after all, this tournament is a lot smaller than what it would get to in Season 3.0, roughly 500 robots, or even more so. So overall, it's kind of what you expect from the show. You're not always going to get destructive robots. It's kind of unfortunate, but that's kind of, I think, fights like Overkill versus Frenzy are why the new show, the rebooted version of the show, requires an active weapon and kind of sort of weighs more on, being destructive. So About Overkill and Frenzy probably would not be able to re-enter the new competition, especially given their bots are a lot faster now. They have to do some pretty serious upgrades anyway. Overkill's out because of the wedge, and the weapon itself not going to do any real damage. I mean, granted, it stops spinning robots, although I don't think it would be anywhere near as strong to resist tombstones. Oh, 35-pound weapon? No, it's up to 75-pound weapon spinning at 2,500 RPM? I mean, it's ridiculous. No way. I mean, it would probably be heavily bent if it does manage to stop Tombstone's weapon, which I don't think it would. Overkill's weapon would probably be so badly bent, I don't think it would be usable again. I mean, heck, it wasn't even usable for another fight later. I think it was Surgeon General who, so Surgeon General or Mechavore, oddly enough, I think both had ended up fighting in Season 4.0. But yeah, even the commentators were kind of all over that fight. You know, just kind of swing and miss. It was mostly, it's kind of like baseball, really. You're just starting out. You're going to do a lot of swinging and missing. You're not really going to, but these are veteran builders, keep in mind. They've both been fighting for at least a good couple of years, especially Christian Carlberg. I think Christian Carlberg and Patrick Campbell both had bots in the original Robot Wars as well. And in the Las Vegas 1999 event. So, but I think it's just a matter of timing. Overkill is probably a lot harder to work with because it's a torque reaction weapon. So, I mean, the weapon's going to move in the opposite direction as the bot. The bot goes forward, the weapon goes back, bot goes back, weapon goes forward. Frenzy, at least you have some control, although it's very minimal in terms of range. At least, because, I mean, it can only fight in a very narrow spot. I mean, Frenzy does have a little bit more control in this case because it's got two-wheel drive, so it can turn more easily. But it didn't matter because it really didn't do anything. I mean, the hazards. This also shows that the hazards are kind of really clustered together in the center of the arena. The Hell Races and Kill Saws are pretty much right on top of each other. Because Overkill goes over both, as I recall, during that fight. But not a whole lot of action at the end of it all. It's kind of unfortunate that it ended that way, but given the fact that you just went through two relatively destructive fights, you probably could have put up with the third one. Like, okay, a little bit of a breather, if you will. Kind of, sort of. Maybe in the sense that no real destruction happens, but at the same time, it's kind of a lackluster fight. You probably could have tuned out by then. You wouldn't have missed a whole lot. They did. Two robots did. That's for sure. But yeah, that's my review on Episode 1 of Season 1.0 for the Comedy Central version of BattleBots. Thanks for watching.